I'm Ken Rhodes of the Ken Rhodes Group Limited, and I am the owner and director of the business.
Fantastic. So, Ken, what I want to do today is literally just a conversation about your experiences really with Business Pilot. So feel free to share, anything, even if it's outside of any questions. I'll try and keep the sort of questions very informal, because what I wanted to share with people is just your experiences rather than just a load of boring flat questions, so to speak. But having said that, let's sort of start, I suppose, with the system, but more than that, go right back to the beginning. What was life like before Business Pilot? Because at some point you've obviously decided to take it on. What were you doing before? What were your systems, processes? What was happening?
So I'm actually young Ken Rhodes. So it's a family-run business. I took it over in 2016 from my mum and dad. My dad's also named Ken, so I'm not that vain that I named it after myself. I always like to get that out there. And so when I first joined, they were still using paper files. So they had filing cabinets. So every time a customer would ring, they'd say, "Oh, hold on, let me just get the file." I mean, again, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of businesses that still operating that way. And the database was actually Microsoft Access, which was a database they'd had built, I think, back in the 90s. Sort of worked for them. They'd always just muddled through. But obviously with that, there was some inconsistencies. There was some limitations to it. So the first thing I did was obviously to make everything digital. So at that time, it was using just a shared drive, like a RAID central sort of database system. But again, the limitation with that was that if I was at home or, and then the fitters would say, "Oh, I haven't had my work through this week. Can you send it to me?" Well, I couldn't. We had to go all the way back to the office, scan it, email it over. So quite tedious. And again, on the fly, if I was not able to get to the office, obviously it was all, network based. So unless you were in the office, you couldn't access the files. So with that, obviously we started to look around what sort of is out there. And I think like most, obviously you come across Admin Base and yourself. So I had the initial call with Admin Base, and I'm only 35. I've sort of grown up with tech. I'm quite tech savvy, and even I thought this is really complicated. And again, we've got various levels of sort of competency in the reps and our office staff, ranging in sort of ages. And I thought, if I can't get my head around this, how am I going to sell it to everybody else? And ultimately, all these systems are only as good as the information that you put into them and as much as you use them. So with that, obviously, we went over to Business Pilot. We chose yourselves. And I think it was around 2019. And we haven't looked back since, to be honest. It's been revolutionary in terms of, one, the fitters app. I think, any fitter that we've joined, we've told them about that. They're like, "Oh, that's amazing." Because again, the amount of time that you had, "Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to tell you about that. I was a broken unit," when you're trying to sort of chase customers for money. All that information is there, instantly. So obviously, as long as the fitters use it, but obviously there's some incentives behind that to say, well, if you don't, then X, Y, and Z. But they've really engaged with it. So again, at the end of the job, just pull the information and then that's it. They haven't got to remember. Trying to ring them. "Oh, do you remember Mrs. Smith 2 weeks ago?" She's saying, "Oh no, I can't quite remember." All that sort of stuff. So that's been a real plus. And again, leading back to what I was saying earlier about not being able to send across surveys and stuff like that. Then obviously with it all being internet based, so wherever I am, if I'm sitting at home on the sofa, I can just quickly email it over, upload it to the app, and all the information is there. So in terms of, again, customer service as well, that's been the real game changer, because the amount of times people would ring up and go, "Oh, sorry, Kelly's been dealing with that. She's not in the office. She's off ill," and there's no information. So again, from a customer perspective, if I ran a company and I had that experience, I wouldn't be very impressed. So what it's enabled us to do is, again, it's as good as the information you put into it. But anytime a customer calls and a call is taken, so whoever speaks to them in the business will obviously update the notes to say, spoke to Mr. Smith. She was unable to get into her door, then I sent it on to the engineer. So at any time, anybody that picks that phone up has got a full history of that customer from start to finish. And again, it just helps to give that customer service, keeps everyone informed, means that two people are not doing the same job, where the tasks come in, which again have been great. Because again, it gets away from the scraps of paper or who's dealing with that. I thought, two people ringing the same customer, all that side of it. Yeah. It's there on your home screen. It's job specific, and the best part of it for us really is, again, chasing the sales reps and keeping track of them. Yeah. Because when we first, my dad was still the main sales rep, and we had sort of two others. And again, he'd obviously been used to doing it his own way. The other rep, 72, so he's not very tech savvy, but he had sort of just muddled through with the way that my dad had done it. Yeah. And again, scraps of paper. It was very basic on Microsoft Access, how you could chase customers for feedback, for the quotes, stuff like that. Whereas this, obviously, you've got not only have you got your pipeline, so you can see where along it is. You can see the customer's quote because they've uploaded it. Any notes, any photos from the when they went to do the quote, anything like that. So again, in terms of a follow up to the customer. You can ring them to say, "Oh, just make sure you got your quote." "Oh, no, we didn't." "Oh, well, you can just email it directly over to them." "Oh, I can see here that he's quoted you this amount," etc., etc., etc. So in terms of keeping them sort of in line, because again, typical sales reps, they're sort of, "Where's my next lead?" And they sort of forget about the ones. If you don't sell it on the night, then they're like, "Well, on to the next one." Whereas obviously we can see, well, we've quoted this amount, and we've only sold this amount. Why is that? And again, from a marketing perspective, we started working with Perplex Marketing at the start of November, again, a fenestration company, and we was looking at different areas and where we sort of target. We do, site specific pages and stuff like that. And I actually sent him over the data and said, well, look, from January to now, this is all the areas that we've got inquiries from. Obviously, as you can see, these are the most, and this was the sort of breakdown of where they came from. And they was amazed. They said, no one has ever sent me that information, and that is like invaluable because it makes their life 100 times easier, and the marketing a lot more, targeted. Shooting in the wind. So they were, they even said, they said, "Oh, what is this software?" because they were really impressed. I could give them that data. And again, from a company perspective, it's imperative because we need to know, right, okay, well, we seem to be getting a lot coming from North London at the moment. So why is that? Where's their lead source from? Do we need to start sort of marketing specifically for that area? Because we seem to be doing quite well there. Whereas, on the back of it, you would think, oh, well, we're in Upminster, so it'll be Upminster and the surrounding areas, not somewhere in North London. So without having that data, you're sort of shooting in the wind. So obviously you've got the email section as well, so you can email internally from that. So again, it's not stuck in somebody's inbox. Obviously you have to have the customer reply to all, which doesn't always happen. But obviously the initial email's there. So if a customer rings and says, "Oh no, I was expecting you tomorrow," you can say, "Well, no, it does. You can see that there was an email sent to you on this date confirming your date for service call, etc., etc." So all the data's there to be able to again follow up, and everybody can sort of is all singing off the same hymn sheet, really. So in all, from sales all the way through to the service, it's just brought a lot more continuity to the company. There's a lot more data that we can use to sort of push forward and to compare again. So we can look to say, well, last January we did X amount of sales. This January we've done this amount of sales. So where's that difference? Are we, are the leads down? All that side of it. So it's basically a tool for the whole. It's not just a database. It's a tool to run the whole business basically off of. And that's what was really key, because a lot of the others, Salesforce, HubSpot, places like that, they're not specific to the fenestration industry. They are just a CRM system. Basically, it's just a list of people and contacts, which is okay for some, but then you're then adding all these other bits in to complement.
That's it. And they are generic. They're going to work for many businesses. And in order to do that, they can't go to the level of depth that we do on fenestration, because they'd have to do that on every sector. So that's why. I mean, and it's horses for courses. But going right back to when you were saying about the the systems you were using, I mean, that's high tech for some of the people. Like when we started this, it was all about how will we get people's data. So it actually started from like Chairwell Windows. They were actually on that other software that you looked at, and I try not to mention, but they were on that. They were on it for over 20 years. Wow. So we had to pull all the data across, and actually now we're pulling data from that system every month, because we get a lot of people wanting to upgrade their systems. So our whole thought was around how will we import this data? But in reality, you'd be shocked at just how many just don't have data to pull. What they've got is filing cabinets full of folders. And so even when we speak to people who had the Access database or the Excel spreadsheets, these are, that was almost high tech. Silly as it sounds, and I'm always saying, just remember the paradigm that we sit in, because we are now in there as either Business Pilot or Business Pilot users, and you forget what so many other people are actually doing at the minute, so, and having all of that data, but also the way it works with you, you were just almost skipping over there some of these core sort of features because you're so used to just using them. So with that in mind, then I'm asking everybody, what is your favorite feature and why is it your favorite? And I know there's a ton of them, but what would you say?
I would say probably, it is tough because it's different for each department, I would say as well. So for the sales department, it's tasks and the pipeline, because I think that it's crucial. Because again, and even now, the fact that it's been added in where you can sort by the pipeline. So again, straight away on a Monday, you can say, right, leads past the sales rep, and you can say, right, well, these are the ones that have not been booked yet, ones that have been quoted. So you haven't got to trawl through all that data. So I'd say that's probably my favourite for the sales. For the operations, like installations, I would say probably the email feature, because again, the amount of time, the amount of time that we had, I would send an email to a customer, or the installation name, would send an email to a customer. I then go on holiday, and then no one's got access to that email, and again, you're going in blind. So the fact that you can see, or even if someone's off ill, you say, well, did they order the glass? And you can see there, right, well, I can see that email was sent to the supplier on this date. So probably the email. I mean, second to that would be the purchase orders, because that's really been helpful for our deliveries. Again, in 2020, we took on, so just after we sort of started working with yourselves, we took on a warehouse, because our current showroom is a high street store, basically. So we had everything would go to site with all the suppliers. So as we started to open up different suppliers, we needed somewhere for the deliveries to go, but trying to keep track of that. So when that was coming in, hasn't come in, the amount of times before that we'd go to fit a door and realise we haven't had the door delivered. So you're ringing customers on the day. Oh, I'm really sorry, Mr. Smith. Whereas with the, every Monday I can send an email list to the warehouse to say, right, this is what we're expecting. Please highlight if any of these don't come in, and then they'll ring, and you can chase them up with the supplier, so that you don't get to that point where you're on the day realising, oh, we haven't got that. So that's been really, really beneficial for us. And then I suppose for the after sales, then the fact that all the service sheets are all in completed. Which was, we had an element of that in Microsoft Access. So you can see the history of the customer, dates and times and all of that. But that is, again, just means that anybody that calls doesn't have to be the service department. They can service that customer saying, "Oh, I can see Steve came out, so we're just waiting on this part," so they can update the customer. So again, it's different elements for different what you're using it for, really.
I had to smile yesterday. So one of my other directs, obviously the other guys run installation companies still, and I've got a set of bifolds, and it's just the doors dropping, so it just basically needs a service call. So I spoke to him on the phone, and I can say Ryan because obviously they're both Ryan. So I said Ryan, any chance you could get someone to have a look at it? And then the next thing, I get the email that's clearly come out of Business Pilot, and I just had a little smile to myself, because here I am now, if you like, receiving the other end, as in the installer's customer, and I'm receiving that through, and I just smiled because I thought it just looks so professional, and I'm seeing it, and I kind of know the magic behind it, but but I still smiled because I thought that just looks so professional. And
the other side of it is the amount of customers that when we do get reviews, which again people often they sort of go, yeah, it's all great, but then they never leave you a review. But when they do, they often point that out. They say, like, the communication was second to none, and it was like extremely professional, because you'd be surprised at how many companies still go out and they don't even send a follow-up email. They don't, it's just on the back of a fag packet type thing, in quotation. Yeah. So to have all of that templated, ready to go, so almost it just becomes, part of what they do with the reps. They're so used to using it now that it's, it's almost a timeline. So they do their quote, email it out to them, send to the customer, update the timeline. It's just all that way along, and the customer, obviously, it's just a case of ticking the template, so they haven't got to write it out every time. They're just so used to doing it now and it keeps, again, it's just customer service. That's and it's helped to keep people updated, and as long as people are updated, no matter even if there's an issue, as long as they know what's going on, then they're fine with it. So it's been great in that respect.
It's you said it earlier, if you were dealing with a company and they were like this, you wouldn't be impressed, and that's exactly it. Everybody now is expecting that full retail experience, the John Lewis experience, regardless of whatever it is they're buying. They might be just buying a replacement window. It doesn't matter what it is. We've all got such high expectations of how the communication should be, how the relationship should be, and essentially what you're describing is just the way that Business Pilot is helping that consistency. It's just always happening the way you want it to. And which, one of the other things I'm sort of asking is about how has it made you more efficient? Well, that's exactly what you've just been saying. You don't have to keep writing these emails out. They're just coming out. It was interesting with your POs. I spoke to somebody the other day, and they were saying how the first thing we train anybody coming into ops is the dots on the cards, on the schedule board, where it tells you if it's a confirmed delivery, whether you've got a estimated delivery date, a confirmed delivery date, or it's actually in. He said it's the first thing we train anybody in the business. And I thought it just shows you how this stuff comes to life, because like from our side, we're here, we're designing it, we're getting feedback, we're pushing it out. That's great. But for you guys, this is how it's actually transforming things day to day. It's so we talk about the software. One of the things I'm really keen on is it's not just software, it's about the people. So at the Fit Show, somebody said to me, what's next from Business Pilot, or what's the future for Business Pilot? And I said, there's two answers to the question. I said, I think what you're asking is what features are coming next, but really the question you actually asked is what's the future? And the future is anything that helps installers to be more successful, more profitable, less hassle, because it's all about the installer. And it just so happens that we provide software, so it's definitely that focus. Which kind of brings me then on to the team. So, I'd love to find out your experience of sort of dealing with our team and what that has been like, and especially if you've got specific examples.
I mean, to be honest, we don't have a lot of dealings with the team, which
Right.
isn't negative. It's just that we
No,
don't.
that's a good thing.
We
You
don't really
don't
have
need
any
to.
issues with
Yeah.
it. So, but when we have in the past, when new features have been rolled out and
Yeah.
stuff like that, obviously a member of your team, I forget her name now, unfortunately, but she came down and done training with the
Oh, so
reps.
I think for you that was Rebecca. Yeah.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rebecca came in. So she sat down with the reps initially, went through all their questions to make sure they were sort of, they could use, they were using it to their advantage. And then she sat down with the other side of the business, installations, to say, looking at how they were using it. Because again, as I keep saying, it's how you use it that will determine the outcome. Because you can use it very basically, and you won't use a lot of the features, but then you're not maximizing its potential. Really interesting, because I sort of said to her, well, this is how I do it, and this is how I sort of muddle along. And she said, right, okay, well, have you thought about this? And I was like, oh, well, I didn't realize you could sort of do that. I just, just using it, like, again, just to sort of as a database, but didn't realize that, right, okay, well, yeah, if I do it in that way, that then follows on to that. And I think that's the main thing that I like about it. It's very systematic. It's like this, then that, then that, then that. Everything follows a process, which, as you were saying earlier, it gives that consistency. And what I like about it is whether you order one window or you're ordering a £60,000 conservatory, everybody gets the same level of consistency. So, you're treating every customer the same, which is what we try to sort of instill into them. Because the amount of people go, oh, I know it's only a small order, and I'm wasting. It's like, no, an order is an order. It doesn't matter to us whether it's up here or down here. You've still chosen us as a company, and so getting that level of consistency. So so day to day we don't really have many dealings, but if there are new features that we're a little bit unsure of, then I'm sure we could just speak to Rebecca. Rebecca would come down again, and just sort of train us up on it. But the features since then, they've all been quite sort of, there haven't been anything that's been mind-boggling that we've had to sort of go in. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And obviously you've got the knowledge base as well, so you can always just go onto there. If there's something you're unsure of, just type it in, and obviously you've got all the videos and stuff there as well. So so we don't really have many dealings with them.
I think that in one sense is almost the best response, even though I was trying to get some feedback on the team. I've got lots of people saying, oh, the team are amazing. We get a really quick response on support or this or the other. Actually, the fact that the system is so easy, I suppose, for you guys to use is probably even better than the response about the team. And again, like the knowledge base, it's interesting. We had a meeting last week all about how we permanently get 5-star reviews, not just on Rebecca, but on Arwin for the training stuff. And I think that's credit to everybody in the team has come out of Windows. They've all come out of fenestration. So they've already worked in those roles, so that's kind of key to us. And but even though we're getting the 5-star, we had a whole afternoon session where we're talking about how do we improve training. And I think that's key, and the knowledge base is obviously part of that. In terms of, we spoke there about some of the new features not necessarily being mind-boggling. There's always a lot of new features coming out. So I wonder if you could just talk about that side of things for you and how maybe some of those new features have helped you guys.
Yeah, again, I think, what's good is you get an email to say, this is what the new features are, a little description of them. So rather than them just sort of turn up, I think the ones that we've used the most recently are, if you're looking at, service calls, or if you're looking at installations, and you can get the map up to say, right, okay, because if it's only a little sort of small add-on job, then you think, right, well, where are we going to put that? Because going all the way to West London for one window, then obviously you think, well, you need to sort of group that. So that's been good to be able to sort of use that to sort of
I think I think similar to that. One of the things for me, we realized early on that like to book installations in a diary is like a silly way of doing it. It just doesn't work in that format. It's how people have done it over the years. But if you think of like I suppose the typical whiteboard or T card system that would be in an office, that's not a diary. So that's what we wanted to replicate and what we did with the schedule board. But then, of course, service calls and sales appointments, they do fit a diary, not a schedule board. So we've always run these two different concepts, I suppose. One which was more about multi-day things, or at least half day, so schedule board, and then the other is service. But of course, some people, in fact, quite often, the same guys doing the fitting are going out and doing service appointments. So having those overlay, that to me was really good, so that you could see the service appointments over the top of the scheduled jobs, and like you say, with that map view. So no, it's good. I suppose in terms of somebody watching now might be, look, we've decided anyway, we think we're definitely going for Business Pilot. I guess what I'd like to know is, what would you say to them at that point? How are they going to get that into their business in the quickest way, or whatever? What would your advice be if somebody said, look, I think we're going with Business Pilot? What would you say to us?
I would say you definitely won't regret it, because, as I said, it's almost like it's almost like, say you had two employees, it's almost like the third employee. And that's the way to sort of look at it. So where you would, in the past, without obviously the features and everything else, you'd have to basically hire another person to do all of those processes. It does all that for you. So, that's the way that we look at it in terms of an investment. It's almost like a digital employee. What I would say is, obviously, as I keep reiterating, it's as good as it's as good as the users and how much you put into it. Because initially, obviously, we were using it very basically because we was obviously getting used to it, and we was used to obviously working in a certain way, using Microsoft Access and then everything else around it. But if you take the time and really invest in the training, making sure your team understand it, how to use it, then the gain from that, so that little bit, 2 or 3 days of just making sure, drilling it into people, you must use it, this is how you use it, this is what this is for, this is how you diarise. So even when people are going on holiday, the reps, by putting in there, then if the sales manager is calling customers to try and book appointments, they're not booking an appointment and then having to ring to say, oh no, sorry, I've just found out he's on holiday. Even down to that level of detail. So, and what the buy-in that we got from the reps, saying, look, we're investing in this for you. We are paying, this isn't free, we're paying this. And essentially it's your own database, because you can manage your own diary from it. You can see the past quotes that you've done. You can go back on ones that you've quoted 2 years ago, previous customers, everything like that. And we are providing that for you, obviously, because it then benefits us in the long run, because we've got all that data, so we can see, right, okay, well, we seem to be losing a lot of solid routes. Why is that? Who are we losing them to? What are the costings on that? So we can see that, right, okay, well, we've lost 5 this month. Maybe we need to look at, do we reduce our margins? Do we sort of, as with the reps as well, sort of have a talk to say, well, if we go down to this, you go down to that, just to try and win more business. But you wouldn't have all that data unless the users input it. So I think really take the time to sort of use it to its advantages, because if you do, then the rewards are paramount. But if you don't, then it's just another piece of software, essentially. So that would be my main advice to people. But I'm saying don't delay on it, because again, we sort of ran along with the Microsoft Access for a long time, and it's only after you sort of see what the potential is from using the software and in making that investment that you can see the benefits that it has to the business. We wouldn't look back to take it away now, I would, it would be a lot of intrepidation, because I think, well, how are we going to do all of this without it? It's become that integral to sort of how we use it in the business, which I think is paramount to, a testament to sort of how good it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is always the challenge, isn't it? It's so, and again, what you've just said there, we get that a lot in terms of, I just couldn't see how we'd run the business without it, or it's like having other people, all that sort of stuff, which is great now that you're a user of it. But before, of course, you don't know that stuff. None of us ever know what we don't know. That's the whole thing. And so I think it's really important to almost get that across to people, that, look, to begin with, you just have to go with it. Yeah. But trust me, within a couple of months, you're going to start to realize the benefits. And 6 months in, you're going to think, how did we ever do it without Business Pilot? You know, and and I still say, you know, we're scratching the surface. I mean, there's so much in the system, but there's a hell of a lot more in our heads in terms of what we're going to be putting into the system. We've not even started, you know, so that's the bit for me. So no, that's been really good. So unless there's anything else that you want to share with people, you know, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and it's exactly what I wanted to put across to people. I wanted to get your genuine, authentic sort of feedback, rather than me try and, you know, line up a load of almost pre-done answers.
The team are very open to suggestion and saying, right, okay, well, as you said, you know, there may have been another company that have also suggested that, which can then, you know, be, it's not just, right, we've built this system and that's it, which I feel like a lot of other software sort of does. They just sort of set it and forget it. There's constant innovation on it. And, you know, the difference between even 2019 and now, it's a completely different product. For the better, obviously. And that just continues. It continues to get better and better as the sort of, you know, as, you know, you get feedback from us and stuff like that. It feels like a lot of a very two-way conversation, not just, oh, well, no, that's going to take too much time and too much investment, we're not going to bother. You know, you are very constantly trying to improve, which I think is fantastic.
So, yeah, I mean, certainly from our side, first of all, it's never a no. Yeah, it's, you know, we take that on board, and then it's, okay, we can't do everything today, obviously, you know, there's a practicality to it. But the first thing is, it's never a no, unless it's something that would make the system worse, you know. So we do get some things in, but even that's not necessarily a no. It's okay, I understand what you're trying to achieve, but did you realize it already does it in a different way? You know? So so that's what I mean by not a no. But even the bits where we can't do that this month, this quarter, because it's just, we've already got a development cycle, still not a no. We've got this massive ideas board, and everything is fed in, because we're very much driven by installers. You know, it's our whole strap line: for installers, by installers. So it's key to what we do. You know, we don't want to just deliver software to people. We want to help people. That's the key.
In terms of admin side of it, it's all there in one place. And again, if people call to say, oh, I didn't get my fencer certificate, on a click, you can look to say, okay, well, it was registered on this date, this is your fencer number, and then it's done. Whereas before, you'd have to log into Fencer, search the register, you know, so which again, you wouldn't want to keep people on the phone. So you put the phone down, often the phone would then ring somebody else. It's the age-old thing. Then they ring back and say, oh, you never rang me back. So, yeah, being able to have that all in one place, integrated, one, in terms of just being able to, you know, for ease, and second, for what, again, customer service, of being able to sort of identify that with a few clicks if you're already in the customer's file, has been immensely beneficial for us.